Hey everyone, it's podcast time, and as you'll notice, our main host, Chris Smith, is not here tonight. He is somewhere on the road between South Dakota and Michigan. I wish I could tell you where. I'm sure it's fun for him, but I have got a whole bunch of fun people with me today. I've got Seyth Miersma, I've got Jeff Perez, and I've got Brandon Turkus, and we are going to be talking about the second annual Motor1.com Star Awards. If you remember last year on the podcast, we had former Motor Oneer Clint Simone, and we had Brett Evans with us talking about it after everything had settled down. And yeah, it's happening again this year, and we have even more vehicles this year, some different categories. It's just going to be a whole different thing. So thanks everyone for joining us. And real quick, I have to thank our listeners. So if you remember last week, Smith is moving to a new house, so he's not going to be here for 2 weeks. And as a housewarming gift to him, I want to give him 400 subscribers to the Motor One Podcast YouTube account. And as of right now, we are only, let me double check my number, we are only 8 people away from that. So if you're a frequent listener who hasn't subscribed, please subscribe. If you have a friend who you think would like the show, subscribe then, or just borrow their phone and press subscribe for me. I'd appreciate it.
You'd be doing them a favor.
Exactly. So without further ado, though, let's talk Motor1.com Star Awards. And I'm actually going to throw it to Seyth Miersma, and he's going to kind of tell us what's different this year compared to last year, what we've changed, why we changed it, and what's going on. So Seyth, please take the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I'm super excited to be here talking about it. It's actually getting to be real. So the Star Awards is something that I've been talking about with you and with these guys and the whole edit team for like a year now, basically, kind of since they wrapped the last one. My first day was a couple of months, I guess, but it felt like Star Wars was still very much present. So it's our of the year award, right? Like we decided last year to launch a yearly award to give our very favorite vehicles in a lot of different categories the recognition that they deserve. And honestly, it all stems from our star rating system. So if you guys go to Motor1.com right now, if you find any of the vehicle reviews that we've done and many of the first drives that we've done, you'll see that there's a star rating associated with those. So what we do is basically break vehicles down through lots of different categories. I actually did the analysis of it a little bit for a video I did for this year's Star Awards, right? And I think it's now I'm going to get it wrong, but we measure vehicle in sort of like 60 different areas, and we look at 144 different points of measure or something like that to rate vehicles. So it's really exhaustive. And at the end of it, what we get is a rating that's on a scale of 10 that basically helps you try and separate the vehicles that are even really good from the ones that are truly great. Right. And so this year, we're repeating that formula. Star Awards was always meant to take our highest rated vehicles of the year, put them together all in one place during test week. And then all of the editors at the site go drive everything, right? And do things head to head. So we take what's kind of good. And if Brandon or Jeff have driven a car and rated it, we trust them and we trust our system to give it a number that we think is really accurate. But things are always different when there's a conversation involved, right? So when we get the cars together and we're able to drive them back to back to back, we get a much different idea of which one is the best. And we think by the end of our test week, we'll really be able to tell you what the best vehicle is in a lot of these major categories. So that's the background. That's sort of where we started. This year, I think for the most part, what we've done is try and expand on the awards that we created last year to make them even more relevant and to make them more entertaining too. We want all the content that we create out of it to be a lot of fun, both to follow along with and to read after the fact. So we've changed the categories just a little bit. We actually reduced the categories by one. And really all we've done here, we're going to go through this category by category and the vehicles that have been nominated in each. But really our focus this year was just trying to get the categories of vehicles that we know people are really looking for, right? So Bruce, you brought this up before, right? The categories that we lost, quote unquote, from last year are a best family vehicle and a best adventure vehicle, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the truth is all those vehicles are really still there. What we've done instead is we kind of made the decision that, and this is going to be shocking to everybody who's listening, but family vehicle these days really means SUV, right? So we've sort of made a more compact category I mean, still one of our larger ones just for best SUV. And we really do think that this year that's going to cover off all of the best family vehicles that we drove. We lost we lost the word minivan in that equation, but the reality is there's so few minivans. There's some really good ones out there, but there was nothing that was going to qualify this year anyways. So, again, this is a fluid process. If 2023 comes along and we've got some great minivans that deserve their own kind of recognition, we take another look at those categories and make sure that we're representing the vehicles that we think people are both interested in learning more about and potentially shopping for. Right. Same deal with Adventure. That Adventure was sort of our more rugged off-road thing, and we think that we can probably adequately handle that during our testing and our rating for both SUVs and trucks. Right. So the categories have slimmed down by one. The other thing that we've done, and this is Mr. Turkus is almost entirely responsible for this, and I think it was a stroke of brilliance, is we're allowing vehicles to compete in multiple categories, just like the real world, right? So instead of saying, well, we're sort of abstractly going to put a couple vehicles into a performance category and others into another one, we're saying, really what people go to market with usually is, I need to fit a certain number of people in a car, and it needs to hit a certain number in terms of my budget. And then beyond that, there's a lot of stuff that's more subjective, right? So we're looking at that. We're looking at our range of, is it 20 or 21 vehicles that we netted out at, Brandon?
It's 20.
Yep.
Yeah, 20 total vehicles this year. But a really good example is the GMC Hummer, which we're super excited to have out in test week, right? The GMC Hummer is obviously an Hummer EV. Is an electric vehicle. It's also a truck. And so it's going to compete in both of those categories against everything else that qualifies as both a truck and an electric vehicle. So when you look at it that way, the fields are deeper. We have a lot of vehicles that we're testing, but the head-to-head competition is going to be really, really interesting that year. This year.
I think that's a really good point. I think looking back on it, and you guys were actually there, or Jeff and Brandon, you guys were actually there, so maybe you'll disagree with me, but I think one of the weaknesses last year, that there were cases where there was 2 or 3 vehicles in a finalist category, whereas this year, I think there's a minimum of 5 almost in every category, and I think that wider breadth is kind of gonna result in some more interesting, a wider array of choices. I guess we'll see. Yeah. This has to be clear, these guys haven't gone out and tested these vehicles yet, all head to head together. So who knows what's going to happen? But it's certainly a wider breadth of vehicles in each category, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, we have a few more vehicles competing this year than last year, but that was something we realized even as we were out testing last year, is we kind of painted ourselves into a corner. In having, these 2 vehicle categories or these 3 vehicle categories. If you look at what we've done this year, and this is kind of the motivation in allowing vehicles to cross compete, is that we have a lot more vehicles. I mean, best SUV, I want to say is 10 vehicles. Best value is 5 or 6. I think the smallest category is best pickup truck, and has 4 vehicles. And that was our biggest category last year. So, it was definitely something we heard it. We realized it while we were out there testing. We heard it from readers after the fact. And yeah, it was one of the big things that I wanted to correct this year, is to make a lot more competitive sets in each award.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last year was funny too, because like you said, we only had 2 cars in the performance category, and we rented out a whole track to test them. So that was interesting, but now we have 5 or 6 in best performance and 5 or 6 in best
by my
truck.
count.
Yeah. So it's way more robust than it was last year.
Yeah, and I think it's really exciting too. Like if you look at some of the vehicles that we have a lot of competitions that I already know we're going to be very, very close. Like I don't think there's a single category where one vehicle is a shoe-in, but there are multiple categories where one vehicle has the potential to take those. If it really, really wows us. So there's, it's very exciting in the sense that anything could happen in terms of what wins here. It's not like last year. I think last year we looked at it and, we had a pretty good idea how things are going to shake out. I have no idea. I have no idea how this is going to go. So that's really exciting from our end to produce the content, to have no idea what path the awards are going to take. I think it's going to be a lot more valuable for the viewers and the readers as well.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So without further ado, would you guys like to get into the categories, or
can I do one more quick? Yeah, two things that I wanted to just cover in terms of that of being different too.
Sure.
That I think are pretty important. One is, and this goes to the point that we were just making, right? We are certainly allowing electric vehicles. This is not new, but we're certainly allowing electric vehicles to compete in all of the categories, right? So EVs don't get lumped off into their own category. Again, trying to replicate the real world where people spend their dollars on things that they want. They don't necessarily say, well, I'm only going to look at EVs, so I'm going to compare things that are sort of unlike in other ways. And to help sort of to help in that effort. You guys know, I don't know if a lot of the Rambling About Cars podcast listeners know or not, but our sister site is InsideEVs.com, right? So Inside EVs does nothing but cars with a plug. And although, unfortunately, we were not able to secure one of the editors over there, Tom Malogny, who's really kind of the godfather of certainly electric vehicle charging, and he's been testing these things since they've existed. We're not able to get him out to our test site this year. We have done a lot of work ahead of time, picking his brain, making sure that he understands and sort of approves of the in-vehicle kind of test sheets that we're going to be filling out as we drive the vehicles. And we're bringing that award to InsideEVs.com too. So we really want to make sure that we're representing the best of the intelligence that we have on the pure electric side in the evaluations of our EVs too. So I think that's really important, and that's going to add a bit of credibility and some importance to the EV testing that we're doing. And then I also just want to throw this out there. You guys will see it. You saw it on the graphic before, but I'm also really stoked that this year we were able to get a title sponsor on board. So the E-Range EV tire is a brand new dedicated EV tire from Saloon Tire, a company that you may not have heard of yet, but they're hitting the market in a big way this fall. So we're stoked to have such a sponsor that's so relevant to the readers and viewers that we have today too. Certainly it'll help going into this testing.
Very cool. Yeah. It seems like the theme generally this year is bigger and better. Last year you have to start somewhere, and that's true with absolutely everything. And you guys got something started, and you figured out the strengths of what was happening. You figured out the weaknesses with what was happening. And now this year it's even better. You've learned from those things. You're applying what you've learned, and so it's an even better Star Awards is what it seems like going into things.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so let's get into the categories. So first up, alphabetical order. Let's start with best EV. I'm going to read these off, and then whomever can kind of start a conversation on those, and I will pop up our review on that as we talk about it. So the vehicles in best EV are the Lucid Air GT, the GMC Hummer EV, the Ford F-150 Lightning, the BMW iX, and the Hyundai Ioniq 5. So
I'm so glad that only one of them has EV in their name. I hate that trend.
Yeah, so this is right away kind of one of my favorite categories because the vehicles are so incredibly different. I mean,
they are.
I mean, you've got Hummer EV, which is barely a truck. I mean, it has a bed. It has a bed. It fits the definition of a truck, but it
weighs
more
a million
than that.
pounds.
It's right. So much more than that. But then you have Lucid Air, which is just a wild high performance luxury sedan. Then you've got Ioniq, which is actually far and away the most affordable of the group. Sure. It's such a varied class that this is the one I'm really excited to talk about.
This is the one I also think is going to be the most difficult to choose.
Oh yeah, there's going to be fights.
There's such a variety, and I think of the, like I said, or like Seth said, that we all kind of split and drive these cars throughout the year and rate them separately. And I've driven the Lightning and the iX, and I think both of those cars I would spend my own money on, right, if I could. So the other four or the other three, I'm excited to get in and see how those compare to those two.
So that actually raises a question I had for you. Is that so? Best performance car, which is a category coming up. You can I can put that in my head, which is quickest, best handling, the most fun on a road, something like that. Best luxury, kind of, that wafting down the road and feeling good. Best value, kind of a jack of all trades for what it is. How do you decide what the best EV is? Like what in your mind, as you're walking into this, is like, how do you define what a best EV is going to be?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, price comes into play. It comes into play in all of our categories, but best EV is, you really have to think about it a little bit differently, because you're obviously going to consider range. Like, range is what everybody thinks of, but there's also charging speed to consider. If you're a road tripper and you want something with a fast DC charge speed, like, that's something that we take into account. We take into account, obviously, how all the vehicles drive, but the metrics that we're looking for in best EV are very different. We're looking at the behavior under regen, like in one pedal driving. We're talking about how it feels through corners, because you have so much more weight down low. There are just, it's kind of like reading the same book in a different language when we're talking about EVs. So that really factors into it. We're thinking about price, we're thinking about range, we're thinking about charging speed, we're thinking about all of these things that are kind of unique to EVs, but also how they factor into the things we measure all other cars on.
Sure.
I think there's something that's a little bit maybe softer in this too. Like, so all the stuff Brandon mentioned is right on, right? Some of that is just going to be based on numbers that exist, right? We sort of know it going in. So what I'm going to be really looking at in the EV category when we're doing head to head is, let's be honest, each one of these things is going to be really special to the person who buys it. There are going to be very few of any of these vehicles sold to somebody who has owned lots of EVs in the past, right? They're not going to have a legacy of this. So, like, for me, the question is, what is the sort of surprise and delight factor of the vehicle, like, within the capability that it's supposed to operate in? Like, how does it wow you? Does it surprise you? Does it make you feel happy in a way that you didn't expect? And another thing that I think is absolutely worth considering is the way that this vehicle operates day by day going to engender a love of EVs, right? Like, is this going to be your first of many, or is this going to be sort of a bump in the road on a longer arc to get in, of being in other vehicles too? Because I do think the Hummer is a perfect example as we have this up on screen, right? GM is very much putting this sort of stake in the ground, as are most of the EV makers or the OEMs that are making EVs right now, saying, like, we're giving you what we hope to be our really good first shot so that you are a new customer for life. The GMC Hummer is going to have very, very, very different customers than almost any other new GMC product launched in the last 20 years, right? It's just going to get a whole different group of people. Will that group of people be impressed? Or will they be shopping for another EV, or will they be back in an ICE car afterwards, right? So I think that's pretty important with EVs. Like, are you winning somebody over to the overall technology and not just the vehicle?
So you guys actually, let me real quick. You guys actually have a really interesting challenge ahead that I'm going to be interested how it goes. So speaking of best EV, you've got the GMC Hummer EV is both in best EV and best truck category. The Ford F-150 Lightning is in the best EV and best truck category. And then you have the Lucid Air GT, which I put up a second ago, but we'll talk about more in a second, where it is in the best EV, best performance, and best luxury category. So,
well, and then you've got iX is in best EV, best SUV, and best luxury. So this is the exciting thing about having vehicles competing in multiple categories,
right? Because it doesn't necessarily, maybe it's not to you the best EV, but maybe it's the most luxurious car, or with the Hummer, maybe it, compared to the other vehicles, it falls down. It's not the best EV, but maybe it's the best truck of the entire range, or the F-150 is, or something like that. So you guys have, like, painted yourself into this really complicated corner where, like, is it the best EV? Maybe, I don't know, but it's a really good truck, or it's a really good luxury car, or it's a really good performance car. So that's why I'm really curious to see how all your deliberations go.
It's going to go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, I don't know if we really talked about this, but what's the most number of categories a single car could win. 3 in theory.
I mean,
right?
Lucid
I
is
think.
Okay.
Lucid is competing for 3.
Well,
and
you guys also have your editor's choice, so technically 4.
Oh, that's
yeah.
true.
So Lucid and IX are the only ones that are competing for 3 awards, not counting editor's choice.
Right.
So, but I mean, the odds of them running the table, I mean,
is low, I think. But
Yeah.
I
mean, if it's all the more impressive if they did.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce, I would say it a little bit differently. That you're right; it's an interesting challenge, no question. But I don't look at it as being painted into a corner. I look at, remember, the baseline here for all these vehicles is excellence, right? Like there isn't a bad vehicle here. Like even the lowest scoring vehicles throughout the year are ones that we would absolutely recommend almost to a person inside of the segment. Right. So you're right. Being able to award a winner of each category is going to be really tough, especially when you've got competing sort of not just powertrains, but like technologies, like fully different technologies behind all of these things. But I think at the end of the day, the winner is going to be an amazing choice, no matter who the winner ends up being. So,
of course it. Yeah, no. It's just that I don't necessarily envy you of like walking in and being like, is this the best EV or is this the best truck or is it the best both? Or, like that's that's going to be a fascinating conversation to have. And I know there's been some discussion with Kyle, our video guy, of maybe recording some of that deliberation. And I hope that happens because I think that could be really interesting to, watchers, readers, however it ends up coming out, to figuring out how that deliberation happened and how, you kind of, I can't think of a good metaphor, how you decide that type of thing.
The process is cool. And without stepping on it too much, because I know that we'll be putting this up on the site, but that's an awesome segue into the fact that we're going to be doing just this, right? We're going to be doing live stream podcasts every night that we're there testing to talk about what we've been doing during the day. Because to a certain extent, we want to be able to bring people along with us, even though we can't have everybody over to our impressive headquarters, our large house out in Southern California. But we want everybody to sort of see that. I think that's fascinating. I grew up sort of wondering how the editors of all the car magazines that I read made the decisions that you're talking about right now. So the ability to sort of bring people a little bit behind the curtain and show us thinking that through and having conversations with, hopefully all of the Rambling About Cars podcast listeners will join in for that. But like anybody who's interested, joining those live streams and having those conversations, I think will be really fun. And for people who are interested in the process, we'll help them understand it a bit more. And also, I think a strength of that is adding a personality. And maybe this is just talking at a school, but it adds a certain personality to our site that people who watch or listen to that can get an idea of, oh, Brandon is into these type of cars. Jeff likes this type of thing. Seth likes this type, it lets you understand what each person is bringing to the table and what they like and what they dislike. And that can be super fascinating. And I'm saying is this at someone who listens to a lot of video game podcasts where that's often the thing, where you realize that this guy likes this type of game and this person likes this type of game. And, that's those personalities are very interesting and they add something to the conversation.
Well, I'll tell you off the bat that I am already mad that not a single Rolls Royce is in this competition because it would win every category.
It's entirely your fault. You did not rate the Ghost high enough, Jeff. Like you have nobody to blame but yourself.
Should have been a perfect 10, to be honest.
I do want to say, log in each night and watch the live stream because I'm willing to bet by like Wednesday or Thursday we're all going to be pretty loopy from some long days in the desert.
Yes,
and you might see some stuff. It might be pretty entertaining.
I love it. Yeah, and our opaque bottles will probably not be filled with water, or we'll have 2 of them too, just to take the edge off a little bit. But yeah, I think it'll be a good time. Honestly, I think it'll be great. And Bruce, I hope to get you and Smith involved in some of that action too, so that you guys can MC, ask us questions, and
I think that's the plan. We'll kind of play the host or the MC, like you said, and we'll kind of throw questions at you guys and see how loopy you are.
I'm telling you, Thursday night, man, is going to be unhinged.
You guys should
person to throw punches, that type of
You
thing.
guys should also do like you should do some live betting on see who the readers think will win each category. Put some money down.
Probably
There's going to be a lot of
something
fun
like
bad
that.
takes too. I mean, it's going to be a good. There's going to be great content. Great content.
Okay, so I think that's our EV category. Let me move over. Sorry, I've got so many tabs open here, folks. I apologize. Let's move into the best luxury category. That would be next alphabetically. So Lucid Air GT, which we just mentioned from Best EV, that is also in that category. Land Rover Range Rover, the Genesis GV70, the Genesis G90, the BMW iX, also in the EV category, the Acura Integra, the Infiniti QX60, and the Jeep Grand Wagoneer. So those are our best luxury candidates.
I can already tell you that Brandon's going to be yelling at us, telling us how wrong we are because we don't pick the Range Rover. We don't think it's the best vehicle in the world. I already know that's happening.
I've known Brandon long enough to know that's true.
I have the exact version of the car we're getting for Star Wars sitting in my driveway at this very moment. So yes, I've already gotten ahead and I'm doing my testing just to support me being right.
I guess my question about this category is, where are you guys going to be driving these cars? Because a luxury car, to me, and you're free to disagree or add or anything like that, but to me, a luxury car should be luxurious not only in terms of interior amenities, the tech, the material quality, the stuff like that, but also in terms of ride. That if I'm driving a luxury car, it should just kind of waft down the road, that type of thing. So where are you going to be driving these cars to experience that?
So one of the benefits of doing this last year is we kind of stumbled on to a really great testing location that has a fantastic varied drive route, a lot of different surfaces, a lot of, different types of driving. There's some high speed, like kind of curvy, almost Autobahn like alpine sections, some twisty canyon roads, some slow, like small, like neighborhood type things. And the surface quality is really varied throughout. I mean, if Jeff will attest to this, if you think about like the neighborhood section near where our headquarters was last year, those are some rough paved roads. There are some dirt roads there. It's not exactly smooth as glass, but then you go up into the canyons and you have much better quality. And especially once you get out into like the farmland, which is kind of like the high speed section, it kind of mimics a freeway and a gently curving freeway with a speed limit at 60-65 miles an hour. So we have a really great varied drive route, but we'll also be making regular runs. We're working just kind of in between Santa Clarita and Palmdale in Southern California. So we'll be making regular runs into Santa Clarita and into Palmdale. So we'll be getting some, real world, like around the general public driving in as well.
Well, I was going to say like super secret testing grounds, but you kind of gave away the plot there.
Yeah, don't triangulate, Brandon.
Yeah.
There's a lot of land between Palmdale and Santa Clarita.
We're okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so last year the house we stayed at had a dirt driveway and a dirt road. So just that alone tells you kind of where the dirt met the pavement was, obviously rough. And then once you get out to those nicer twisting roads, it was a lot smoother. So yeah, there's a ton of variation. And I think the luxury vehicles, especially on some of these rougher roads, are going to either show that they're as good as we think they are, or, maybe they don't feel as luxurious. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, and I don't want to listen, ride is super important in the luxury segment for sure. Amenities are very important. That kind of sense of do I feel like a successful person? Do I feel like I've made it when I got behind the wheel of this car? I think that all falls into it. But I would say maybe this is me being don't count anybody out, but we've got an Acura Integra in here too, right? We've got a car that fits into the luxury, borderline straddles luxury and performance. I think there are good reasons for putting in a luxury, but we've got an incredibly affordable car that we all really love driving, that does things very differently that will do things that the Genesis G90 won't do, right? So, and at a price point that's far more accessible than anything else that is competing against. So I think that there's an element of luxury too that says, for the money that I'm spending, am I getting an experience that's far above average, right? And because the Acura's price point is much closer to average, the sort of top end of how it has to compete, I think is very different too. So that's tricky. Like, we're talking about, all of this is a little bit difficult, but I think being able to evaluate those two things as peers will be really interesting too.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is, like, yeah, we're going to be driving these cars a lot, but there's also a lot of judging that is going to go on with them parked at our little compound, and as we crawl around them, and we're going to be thinking about, not just ride quality, but we're going to be thinking about how supportive the seat is, how adjustable the seat is, how good the sight lines are, like how ostentatious the cabin is. These are things that to a luxury customer that really, really matter. Like, is it over the top? Does it have, alligator leather upholstery? Like, is there something cool about it that's going to make it feel special every time I get behind the wheel? So there's much more into it than just how they're going to drive.
I'll say this too. This is one of a few categories that has two cars from the same manufacturer. So obviously we have GV70 and G90, and it's going to be interesting to see how those two compare just to each other, and what we think is the best luxury car for, maybe the price or relative to the features or the segment, whatever we think. But that's another sort of challenging aspect of it.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure. It speaks pretty highly of Genesis that they've got two competitors, and there are other cars that were kind of, again, like nudging right up against the various segments too, to fit in. So it's cool to see that in and of itself is a success story. So luxury will be fun. This is also one of our biggest categories. We found out that, as it turns out, luxury cars score pretty highly on our star system, our star rating system, and it's fun to have a bunch of them out there to go head to head.
So let's move on to best performance then. And so there we have the Lucid Air GT, which was also in the EV segment, the Honda Civic Si, the Audi RS3, the Cadillac CT5V Blackwing, and the Hyundai Elantra N. And as you guys mentioned earlier on, there was a track for last year. Do you guys have a track rented for this year, or is it more of an on-road test this year?
Nope, we're renting out a portion of Willow Springs again, a bigger, more substantial track, and we'll have all of the performance cars there, which is going to be super, super exciting. We're going to do, for the first time, we're going to do some instrumented testing, which is going to be very, very fun. So yeah, it's a very different, we're judging the cars in a different way than we did last year, where it was very much focused just on how they drove. We're going a lot deeper into it. I did want to say that this is one of the few categories where we had, by and large, not to get too deep into it, by and large, every automaker we contacted was very keen on participating. Best performance is the only one where it was like the automaker came back and said, we would love to compete, we just don't have any cars. So this class was originally supposed to include the BMW M240i. They just aren't going to have any cars on the ground. And then it was going to include the Nissan Z, which would have been super exciting. And that, totally. Again, they just didn't have any vehicles. So we ended up with the current crop that we have right now, which I think is a great varied class of vehicles. I'm thrilled to see the RS3 in there. The Hyundai Elantra N I just got out of a few weeks ago is just a firecracker of a little sedan.
Yeah, that's the impression.
And then obviously Lucid Air GT, having a performance vehicle that's also an EV is not over. Now I wouldn't say overdue, but I'm very happy to see that we looked at that and decided, yes, this absolutely should be here. Being regardless of the fact that it's an EV, it deserves to be there. So
totally, yeah. I mean, it's not going to be available yet, but they have the Sapphire coming with that 3-motor setup, and what is it, 1,200 horsepower, something like that. It's not available yet, so it's not in testing this year, but it's
Yeah,
certainly deserves to be
this
there.
class is incredibly exciting. Not just because of what we have and how varied it is, but having the track and having the drive route, and we're really going to get to explore just how capable these performance cars are.
Yeah, and I'll just say too, listen, we are always going to evolve and like I said, to sort of kick this off, right? Like we're gonna change Star Wars as we need to best reflect what people are actually looking for in the market, right? That being said, it's really fun to do performance car, like our performance car test. Like this one will be cool. Having the track time is good, as Brandon pointed out. So you should know too, the goal is, I don't want to overcommit because we're still a couple weeks out, but the goal is very much to have all of the performance cars, of course, and then all of the EVs on the track, at least for the instrumented testing portion of it, right? Because we think, like, obviously, acceleration and braking performance is really interesting for both of those segments, and then how the performance cars actually lap the track, I think, is also obviously a critical factor for how performance car nets out. But this is just red meat for enthusiasts, right? This is what we geek out about. Sure, it's a bummer not to see cars like the Z and a BMW out there, but I don't doubt that we're going to have some really robust debates over the group that we have right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this might actually be the one we argue about the most, because performance, especially with the crop of vehicles we have here, is like so varied depending on person to person, what they prefer, steering feel, suspension, like stuff like that is interesting, and I think we're going to have a lot of conversations about it.
Well, the other thing I just realized looking at this that is super exciting, all the vehicles that we have in best performance are 4-doors. And they're all radically different. I mean, we've got a supercharged V8, we've got a really high output, kind of laggy, big boosted turbo in the Elantra, and we have a 5-cylinder all-wheel drive thing that drives like a rear driver, has a drift mode and everything. I mean, it's such a varied class that I think it's going to create there's going to be more than a few arguments over which one will win this category.
Yeah, and then you've got stuff like the SI and the Blackwing, which are just like, again, like those are absolute exemplary examples of vehicles that would have been performance car of the year candidates for years and years. They just happen to be a little bit more traditional, right?
Yeah, and let's keep in mind, last year's best performance car winner was the Volkswagen GTI, and it beat the BMW M3. So the Pocket Rockets absolutely have the ability to win this category. They've done it before. It could well happen again. It's a really, really compelling class of vehicles that we have coming in. Right.
And don't underrate, although Bruce, you brought it up and you're right, like the Lucid specs on all their vehicles are insane. The Air GT makes do with, what is it, only 990 horsepower without the performance pack on it. Yes. This is one of the few cars that I think I've driven and not a lot of the rest of the crew has. I can still say that it is a spectacular performance car, and I think will be acquit itself really well.
And the great thing is it's only the second most powerful car we'll have the entire competition. So
it's crazy.
So next up, let's move to the biggest or the category with the most entrants in it, and that is best SUV. So I will read these through. We have Land Rover Range Rover, which you will remember was also in best luxury. The Genesis GV70, also from best luxury. The BMW iX, which was in best EV. The Kia Sportage. The Infiniti QX60. The Jeep Grand Wagoneer, which was, and the QX60 was also in best luxury along with the Wagoneer. Sorry about that. Honda CRV and the Subaru Forester Wilderness. So pretty packed there. I think that's 8 vehicles. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 8 vehicles. So that's the biggest category. And again, I gotta ask, with where you're testing them and how you're testing them, what makes the best SUV? Well, how, as opposed to something else? Brandon, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Well, so I mean, we're going to be testing them in the same way. We're going to be driving on the same drive route. I think more than a lot of the other categories, it's going to be less about how they drive. Like, yes, we know all of these cars drive really well. That's how they got here. That's how we rated them. especially compared to best luxury. Let's talk about, you've pulled up the QX60 is a fantastic example of what we're going to be looking for and how it's going to be different. In best luxury, we're looking at material quality. We're looking at like how special it feels and kind of these intangibles. Best SUV, we're going to be looking at how easy is the second row seat to move forward? How accessible is the third row seat if it has one? Does it have enough cup holders? Does it have enough cargo volume? Does it have any like cool interior cubbies? The things that SUVs really need to do well. And it's ironic that I'm one of the childless ones on this pod talking about this.
No,
like,
Jeff doesn't have children, and I don't have children.
Well, yes, we have one father among us, but exactly. How does the vehicle work for families? Because that's this category used to be called best family, but it is effectively best SUV. But we're still looking at the same things, like how it works for families. Like, does it have magical stain fighting upholstery? Does it have, can your 7-year-old kid move the middle seat forward to get to the third row, or do I have to come back there and do it for him? Like, all of these things that, they're the same kind of vehicles that we might be driving in best value or best luxury, but we're looking at them in an entirely different lens.
I think to that point, the numbers are important here too, right? Because you could say a Honda CR-V, why would you buy that over, or why would it be rated higher than, a comparable Kia Sportage or something, right? And when we rated it, or when I believe Seyth reviewed that one, it was like, okay, the price is good, the fuel efficiency is great, the cargo space is great. Like, it just ticks these boxes that people in that category are going to want. And it is pretty good to drive. So some of them are going to be like, it does all the things right and it drives pretty well. So I think this one's going to be interesting. That Subaru is actually kind of my dark horse pick. I really love that thing, even though I know it's not, doesn't have the specs maybe to compete.
Turbo in it, man.
I know, but I love that thing.
Why did they put the turbo in that car?
I'll tell you what, like we haven't talked much about, price, but like value plays a much, much bigger role in best SUV than it does in best luxury. So you look at something like, I think the Range Rover is one of the best vehicles you can buy right now, but is it going to be the best SUV? I don't know, because a CR-V is a quarter of the price and a Sportage is a quarter of the price, and it does a lot of the same things that SUVs need to do as well. So it's go ahead, Seth.
I don't think there's any question in my mind that best SUV is going to be the hardest category to win. I think like you could make an argument for best value, but as the field of SUVs is bigger. It's the vehicle type that everybody is buying these days. Right. I'm going to be rigorous, and I'm going to be beating people over the head to be really rigorous about little stuff that matters a lot for SUV buyers as we're going through this. Value is incredibly important. And to win this award, the winner is going to have to do everything really well, right? Because that's what SUVs do. SUVs are, you should go into this assuming that this is your only vehicle. And if this is my only vehicle, can it accomplish everything that my family needs to get done, right? As Brandon alluded to, it's got to have space, storage, like Jeff was talking about, it's got to have the fuel economy numbers. It's obviously got to be a great value. It's got to be really easy to use. It's got to feel simplistic, but still like I'm getting something special and a little bit advanced where that counts. Like, is the infotainment slightly above the other competitors? Is it easier to do things like hook up my technology, hook up my phone? Obviously,
are they safe? Are they safe? Exactly. Is the active safety technology good to use, or do I want to turn it off every time? Totally. This is more than any other category, the one where we really need to look at every single aspect of the vehicle. I mean, there's not really a portion of how the vehicle behaves or performs or works in the real world that we aren't going to be considering in this class. Mm-hmm. It is far and away the broadest category in terms of the things we're considering.
Yeah, and I'm going to shove both of you in the third row of each of the 3 rows to make sure that it's human size back there, because you two are the largest humans.
Seth is the large the long way. I'm large the wide way.
I'm very willing to do that. Yeah. No, but it's super important. I was just doing this weekend, man. It didn't make the cut for this one, or didn't qualify for this one. Brandon will be able to tell us, but I was in the standard wheelbase Escalade, and I took my wife, my mother-in-law, and my two small children 200 miles away from my house and back. And like, we used every cubic foot of the space that was available. How the second rows folded mattered a lot because we had a kid in the third row. How malleable the space is to be able to fit different items different ways was super important. Like, that stuff matters. It makes the difference of like making the trip or not, really, in a lot of cases. So yeah, this one will be fun. But there's a lot. I know we're saying we're arguing about a lot. I don't know if we'll argue as much about this one from a place of passion, but I think this one is really, in my mind, going to be the brain buster, because you have to be so successful in so many different areas to win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be really easy to poke holes in other people's arguments.
Sure. Yep.
Like, that's really what it's going to come down to. So that one will be that. I'm excited to get into that one, which I never usually say about SUVs.
So next category would be best truck. And that the entrants in that are the GMC Hummer EV, which was also in the EV category, the Ford F-150 Lightning, which was also in the EV category, the Ford Maverick Hybrid, and the Toyota Tundra Hybrid. And just to preface this, I thought this was the most interesting category last year because, like I said, on last year's episode, we had Clint Simone and we had Brett Evans who were telling us about last year's Star Awards. And while it didn't win, the Ford F-150 Hybrid kind of was their favorite vehicle simply because Clint said they essentially just plugged every bit of battery or camera or whatever needed to be recharged into that vehicle.
Yeah.
So while it didn't win the overall award, it became like the most useful vehicle of the test last year. So I'm very curious to see how things work out this year.
Yeah, so just to give a little background on that real quick. In the early planning stages for this version of Star Awards, like this year's Star Awards, I originally had it in there to schedule a F-150 hybrid just as a support vehicle. That's how popular it was. It came with us everywhere. It did everything.
Right.
And then the F-150 Lightning qualified, and we've got most
kind of does the same thing.
Yeah. The thing that really excites me about this category is it's the only one in the contest besides Best EV, obviously, where every vehicle is electrified. We have two EVs, we have two hybrids. There is no gas-powered vehicle. We've got, radically different sizes. Lightning and Tundra are about the same size. Hummer is basically a mid-sized truck in a 3/4 ton body. And Maverick is just a cute, adorable little thing. So it's a really interesting test in terms of how, again, I feel like a broken record, but like how much variety we're going to see in this category.
No, I think that's fair. I'm curious, do you guys plan to load them up with anything? Like, is there going to be any towing tests? Is there going to be any payload test? Like, what, because the truck segment, of course, a lot of people just use them as daily drivers and they just drive them around. But there are people out there that use them. The whole reason that you buy a pickup truck is that at least occasionally I'm going to throw something in the back that's heavy or big or whatever. So I'm curious how your methodology is different with this class versus the others.
Yeah, Bruce. So let me just say, like, all of those figures do get factored in, like at the front again, like when we're rating the vehicles, like we have that. The truth is that at Star Wars, although I was really pushing to do much more expansive sort of testing of the different vehicle segments. Listen, the reality is the reality, right? We're gonna have we're gonna have 6 people there. We're gonna have 20 vehicles, logistics to handle, and we've got less than a week to do all of this, which sounds like a lot of time. But when you actually start, believe me, having just done this exercise, when you start mapping out everything that you want to do with every vehicle, the time gets eaten up. So there was a lot of conversation months and months ago about whether or not trucks should be broken out into their own award for these very reasons, right? So the reality is no. Like, we're going to have to assume that the facts and figures of the ratings, right, like payload and towing and stuff are what they are, and put that into our brains as we're doing these evaluations. We definitely can test anything that is in the truck that would sort of aid in things like towing, technologies that would make it easier to hook up a trailer or things like that. But this won't be, we aren't going to be able to do really robust testing in terms of that kind of towing stuff. Although that's something that I would really love to do moving forward if we're able to get kind of a bigger.
Just going to say that.
Yeah,
we'd love to include that in the future. It's just there are so many moving parts to put this thing on. But no, I mean, talking about what building on what Seth said, there's a lot of things in these trucks that we're going to be looking at specifically. Towing technology is a huge one. Setting up a trailer, camera system, stuff like that. But also innovative features. You want, is there something really cool in the bed? Is there like a reconfigurable tailgate? Are there enough tie downs? Is there box lighting standard? The Maverick has something where you can 3D print like accessories to go in the car. Like these are all
really. I've never heard of that. Huh?
Yeah. So there are. It kind of goes back to what I was saying. Is there's a lot more to consider than just the headlining things.
Totally.
It's not just about towing capacity, because I mean, obviously the Maverick can't stand up to a Lightning or a Tundra, but
no,
it might do truck things in a different way. Its bed is easily more flexible for somebody that's my wife's height rather than a tall Dutchman like Seth. So there's a lot more to it than just classic truck things.
We should probably say too, before our Inside EVs followers yell at us, that we wanted the Rivian R1S, right? But we just couldn't get it. But we reached out to our Rivian, and their official line was that they're focusing on ramping up production of R1S. So I wish it could have been there. I understand why. Maybe next year. And then Cybertruck will probably be for like 2040 eventually.
All right.
No, sorry.
I'll bring the ball bearings to test that bulletproof glass.
But it is really cool that we have 2 electric trucks, because this is still a relatively new segment, right? We've seen only a few electric trucks in the past 2 or 3 years, so it's cool to have these 2 qualify, and I think it's going to be really interesting alongside the Maverick and the Tundra, which I actually really like that Tundra. So
that the Tundra we're getting, and I should clarify, it's the Tundra TRD Pro. So not only is it going to be the hybrid, which is far and away the best powertrain in that vehicle, but it's going to be a bright orange TRD. I had one like it a couple weeks ago. It blew me away with how good it is. It is a fantastic truck. So this category is really going to be interesting in terms of old versus new versus, very, very new versus very small versus large. I mean, it covers, with just 4 vehicles, it covers such a huge swath of capability and consumer need. So I can't wait for this category.
I want to bring this up too, and this is not, I hope this doesn't come off as defensive to anybody, because I certainly don't mean it that way, but it's really relevant to trucks, right? People drive trucks like they drive any other vehicle most of the time. Even if somebody is using their truck to tow their boat on the weekends or something like that, they're probably not towing their boat 52 weekends a year. Even if they use it for work and they're driving it to and from work, and their work involves putting big loads in the bed of the truck, they're probably not doing that literally every day or every time that they drive the truck. These things absolutely have to perform like normal vehicles first and foremost. The defensive part is this. We also we understand, I would love to have like a full featured, much larger truck test that is part of or a complement to Star Awards going forward. It's something that I think that we can build to, but we are the scrappy startup when it comes to doing an Of the Year award, right? We're going to look at it like that. We're going to look at trucks like we look at other vehicles. Like, we're real people. We write about cars a lot. We know a lot about cars. We drive a lot of them. But at the end of the day, we're real people, like the people who are watching this podcast and the people who will be reading the Star Awards coverage. And we want to represent that too. So I think that it's really important to say that, we're going into all of these things eyes open. We're not race car drivers. We're going to be driving performance cars on a track to get a sense of how they handle and where the limits might be. But we're not setting records at Willow Springs in anything that we're driving either, right? So I think that's kind of important. Not that we don't want to have the most professional and accurate kind of testing possible, but I also think it's really important that we're representing the real people who are actually buying these things, and that comes into play for trucks. So. That's my spiel. Done.
Totally. And then last, but not certainly not least, in fact, probably, well, least in its own certain way, best value. So the best vehicle for what you spend it on. So they're not the lead. You know what I'm saying? So in this category, we have the Honda Civic Si, the Acura Integra, the Kia Sportage, the Ford Maverick Hybrid, the Honda CRV, and the Subaru Forester Wilderness. And you'll notice all of these vehicles come from some other category, whether I don't know if you guys did that on purpose. I should have asked you about that. Did you guys do this on purpose, or is that just the way it worked out?
No, so I played around with a lot of different permutations of assembling these vehicles, and the baseline that I started with was looking at every category and picking the top 3 highest rated vehicles that qualified for that award based on our star ratings. Mm-hmm. It just so happened that best value overlapped with other categories. Mm-hmm. But what I will say we did here is this is the only category in the entire contest that has a price cap.
Okay.
All of these vehicles are available for under $40,000 because 40 is the new 30, as I keep telling myself when I turn 38 this year. But yeah, so this category, it's the only one with the price cap. But no, we didn't do that intentionally. It just kind of worked out that way. But yeah.
Okay. It is crazy. I mean, you said 40 is the new 30, and I think we talked about that a little bit of like, could we do 35,000? Could we do 30,000? But the market has just been so, I mean, affordability is such a hard thing to find in today's market that I think the cars that we did find that were affordable, or at least affordable for the segment, are really good options price wise. So
yeah, and that's the thing. Sorry, Seth. There are vehicles in here that nudge right up against $40,000. There are some that we consider that as soon as you put that $40,000 cap in place, we're just ruled out. I think there are a few examples of things you could build beyond $40,000 if you got really wild with the pricing sheet. But by and large, the bulk of the trims for all of these vehicles is available for under $40,000.
Yeah, the fact that all of again, I'm sort of flipping it. The fact that all of the competitors in best value are also able to stand up and compete with things that are much more expensive in other categories, that's huge. 2, just to hit on your price cap point, Brandon, you're right. This is the only category that by definition we put a price cap in, but everything else is going to be judged on value relative to the class as well, right? So it's looked at kind of a different way. This is a headline way of looking at, obviously, for the value standpoint, but incredibly important. Value is one of the things that is important across every category, right? Maybe a little bit different when you're talking about luxury, when things tend to be very expensive. But looking at it just on the surface and dividing the ecosystem up that way, I think is a really interesting way to look at vehicles.
Well,
so
there's some other interesting things here too. I mean, Seth and I were talking about this, I think, last week, and he asked, why do we have Civic Si and Acura Integra? Because, they are basically the same car. There are some differences, but but the rationale was Civic Si is best performance, Acura Integra is best luxury. They both work for best value, but they have very different purposes in reasons to exist. So you look at that, and then you look at the other cars in the category, and you've got Maverick, and you've got Subaru Forester Wilderness, you've got CRV, you've got Sportage. It's just such a varied class of vehicles that do a bunch of different things really, really well. It's going to be difficult to judge because of that, but I think it's going to be really fun to consider why a Maverick is a better value than a Civic Si, and why that is a better value than a Kia Sportage or a Subaru Forester. I'm excited for that challenge.
And then I gotta ask, because it's not calling it our best of award isn't fair, but I'm gonna leave it to you. You guys argue about this. What is our Editor's Choice Award? How do you decide it? Why is it important? Because I'm gonna leave it to you guys because I can't quite put it into words. So
I'm gonna use what we decided on last year to kind of explain it. editor's choice, we're considering all the vehicles that were eligible for the awards, that were in attendance, and everybody kind of like takes off their objective hat and gets really subjective about what they like and why it deserves to be editor's choice. We ended up settling on the Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo last year because, for a few reasons, it could have won best EV, it could have won best performance, it could have won best luxury, but it was also a vehicle that every single time we had to go somewhere, we just had to transfer people from one place to the other. The first set of keys that anyone grabbed was the Taycan. So yes, we're looking at it in terms of like, how competitive is it for awards, but we're also looking at it in like, which one of these vehicles did I just really want to drive all the time? It's the opportunity for us to step back from judging vehicles on practical matters and really just let our enthusiast flag fly and say, that is the best vehicle. That is, it does this, and this well. That is why it is our editor's choice. It's the one that we would have.
I think there was even a point, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think there was a point where someone, might have been you, Brandon, was like, all right, we got to park the Taycan for a little bit because
I got tired of going to charge it. I got tired of going because I would be the one that kept on having to drive to Santa Clarita to plug the thing in at a Walmart. And if you've ever parked a lime green Porsche EV at an Electrify America charger, you get a lot of weird looks. I got tired of charging it, and I basically like hid the keys because I got tired of everyone taking it.
But
so
I think that's the best measure of editor's choices. When all the cars are there at the house, or even, a majority of the cars, it's like, which one do you want to jump in just to go, help someone with a photo shoot or just go get groceries in? Like, I think that's going to be the deciding factor for this one. And it's going to be, I mean, I was just looking at the list and I'm trying to think of like, could I narrow it down to 3 that I think would maybe be my
it's
top
gonna be the
3?
Range Rover. I mean, it's gonna be the Range Rover.
I know Brandon loves that Range Rover.
Well,
Brandon.
I mean, but I also want to say, we're driving these vehicles to assess them, and we're going to be going on drive loops for them. But there's also going to be a lot of driving of just like moving people from A to B. Like, we only have 6 people. We have to get 10 cars to the track. So there's going to be we're going to be using the Range Rover as a shuttle car because it's the Range Rover and the Grand Wagoneer as shuttle cars because they're biggest. Like, they're going to be vehicles that we spend a lot of time in, not because we have to test them, but because we actually have to use them for something. And
already,
that can kind of
talking up the Range Rover. I can see it.
I noticed that, man. I noticed.
But no, I mean,
sneaking it in there.
When we were doing it last year, we talked about Lightning too, or not Lightning, F-150 hybrid, because it was the All-Star. So yeah, we're when we're considering editor's choice, we're considering all the testing that we did, but we're also considering how we use the vehicle over the course of that entire week. And the two things can kind of end up being at odds. And it's always interesting to see how they shake out and what we actually settle on.
Yeah, I just think, listen, there's going to be there's a little bit of sort of left brain versus right brain or head versus heart in all this, right? Like we're talking a lot about how we've gotten to the point with all these vehicles. We've talked a lot about, like how we numerically rate them, about how we have to be at least quasi-scientific about how we go in and look at these different categories in the vehicle in all, because it's complicated to compare things that aren't entirely alike, right? And for editor's choice, my thing is like, I just want to take those restraints off. I want people to talk a lot about what speaks to them and why, and make a case, right? And I think that case, no matter what it is, if it's compelling to us, if it sort of wins the debate amongst us, it's going to be compelling to our readers too, and be really meaningful to the readers. So it is interesting to think about like handicapping it. Like some of these other ones, you might be able to go and be like, yeah, I've got a pretty good idea that this is at least going to be a leading contender, or these might be the top 2 or the top 3. For editor's choice, because it is so wide open, it really is hard to say. And I think year to year, it'll probably be a different sort of criteria a different set of criteria that help us decide it. And I think that's fair. Like, I think this is the one, like I said, that we give kind of from a place of emotion and not a little bit less of a place of reason, which makes it more entertaining.
Well, very cool, guys. So can you tell our listeners and our watchers, when will we be seeing the first bits of Star Wars content on the site? Is that known quite yet?
Well, they can go and we can link this up as needed, Bruce, but they can go and take a look at the explainer video, the sort of intro kickoff post that we did on the site right now. By the time this podcast is live, we just went over all of the categories and all of the nominees. We're going to have a story that they can read if they want to check that out in a little bit more depth about what the nominees are this year. And then there is also going to be a piece, I believe, next week. We talked a little bit about this, but we're going to be doing all the live podcasting from test week as well. So we're just a schedule of events, right? Like if you want to join in, if you want to watch along with some of this, where and how to watch, and a list of links for you to click on those and see it. And then of course, all of that's going to populate both on the site and across social media, like all of our content does, right? The actual winners are we're going to be testing the first full week of November, and then we are going to be doing all the work, number crunching, and media creation that we need to do. So the plan right now is that the first week of December is when the winner posts will start to roll out, right? So throughout that week, we are going to we're going to be posting winners and categories. And yeah, I really hope that everybody who's watching right now sticks around to read all of it and see all of it. I'm sure we'll do another podcast to kind of do another wrap on it too. So should be full on Star Wars this year, and I'm stoked. Like I said, I'm excited to do it. I'm excited to get the content out there and then see what the feedback is. So
totally. I can't wait for Smith and I to talk to you guys late at night after driving cars all day and finding out
that Thursday night live stream is going to be something else. I'm telling you right now.
I'm looking forward to it, man. But yeah, I think that's our show. Unless there's anything else we want to promote.
I'll say follow us on social media at Moto1Com, and you can see a lot of the live stuff that we're going to be doing while we're there. Brandon will do some TikTok dances. It'll be great.
In front of the Range Rover, right? Only if I will sell TikTok dances for Range Rover votes.
Wow. Wow. So real quick, before I let you guys promote your stuff, I'm going to promote Rambling About Cars real quick. Again, 7 or 8 more subscribers is what we need to give Chris Smith his housewarming gift. So that's not a lot, folks. 7 or 8 people out there who are listening to the show, frequent listeners, or think you have someone that would like the show, subscribe on YouTube. You'll make he and I have a very, very good day in 2 weeks. But yeah, Seth, Jeff, Brandon, is there anything you guys want to promote? Your own personal social media, Motor One social media, just anything across the board? Go for it, guys. Jeff, you are the first person to the right of me that I'm looking right now. So Jeff, you go first.
Like I said, Motor One social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We'll be doing a ton of stuff from Star Wars. So there will be a lot to see in a few weeks.
Okay. Seth, your turn.
I want to promote. Well, I also want the subscribers to jump. I want to hit that 400 mark. I want to even hit a higher mark. So I can't quite commit to it yet.
Let's start with 400. We're growing.
I can't commit to it yet, but you've inspired me, Bruce, that we need to come up with a plan. I have so much swag in my house. I have so much stuff that I've never used that was given to me by automakers. I need to give it a little run through the old brain and through the lawyers and figure out what we're allowed to do. But I bet we can come up with something cool. Maybe on the next Rambling, we can offer some subscriber bounties or some swag bounties for hitting subscriber targets. So let me think on that, and I'll try and make. We'll try and make announcements through social media, through my personal social media, and then through all the Motor One stuff too. So
I'm staring at least 4 hats right now that still have tags on them that are from automakers.
I bet we can do something. I bet we can get something pretty good for that 400th person, or for a randomized version of the 400th person, if we can figure that out. Or maybe it has to be 500 or a little bit later. But I bet we can do something cool there.
Well, Brandon, you're the farthest to my right as I'm looking at you guys right now. So, Brandon, it's your turn. Promote anything you want to promote, man.
Follow Motor One for much more stuff about Star Wars and automotive content and all of those things. Follow me if you want pictures of food and dogs and Reddit memes and
I
occasionally
follow
things
you.
about-
There are not enough dog photos. Come on, man.
Okay, they're enough. I'm slacking. And occasionally things about cars.
No, there are a lot of cars, not enough dogs.
Okay, I will endeavor to do more dog photos. But yes, you can follow me for all those things, but you should absolutely follow Motor One for all of your other things related to cars because
You
they
also-
do a good job.
Everybody also has to go read Brandon's review of what might be the weirdest car of the year. That's on the site right now, right?
Yes, go read my review of the Toyota Crown that I call big, cramped, weird, and confusing. So it's a stellar headline. Yeah.
So excited.
It's-
So excited for that one.
Yeah.
All right. And as always, Motor One Podcast is the YouTube channel. Podcasts@motor1.com is our email address if you want to send anything there. And yeah, that'll be our show for tonight. So as always, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. We appreciate everyone who listens, everyone who comments, everyone who subscribes, just everyone who checks us out. And yeah, honestly, we really, really do appreciate you. So thanks for tuning in for the Star Awards episode, and I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.